But this whole Epstein thing, I keep thinking of Ghislaine Maxwell, the daughter of Robert Maxwell, who literally scammed millions and millions from his employees' pension funds, and not just pension funds. He had like a pyramid scheme on the go with businesses and newspaper collections and so on. And he was moving money back and forth from different ones. But there's more to Robert Maxwell than met the eye. And it ties in, of course, with the daughter as well, and the other child, no doubt. But it says here, this is an article from 2000, year 2000, about the business empire. I've got articles too when they supposedly found the body of Robert floating way far off, etc. And that's a different story again. It says here that Ghislaine Maxwell, daughter of disgraced media tycoon Robert Maxwell, it was an exquisite moment of triumph and redemption. She sat in the front row of Fashion Week's Ralph Lauren show after her dad was such disgrace in Britain, that is, not outside of Britain, but in Britain, for what he'd done. They took a lot of scamming indeed. But it says here, and the man at her side at that time, because for her, Ghislaine and the rest of the family, they were nationally embarrassed and so on, right? But it says here that guess who launched her back into the limelight? And it was, in the year 2000, Prince Andrew. That's who was arm in arm, who led her there, you see. And it says all the cameras flashed and so on at this show. It says the favourite child of the former New York Daily News owner smiled regally and quietly savoured the attention. It says just a short time ago people spat the name Maxwell if they spoke at all about it. Now that the public gesture of friendship with Britain's most eligible royal was a signal to the world that the once reviled Maxwells were back and beautiful, and 39-year-old Ghislaine is their public face, it says here. It's quite the usual stuff, she's up and coming again, from nothing again, cleaned out financially, although she was left £100,000, I guess it was, a year in an untouchable fund that their dad had worked out. I'm sure it was a lot more than that, mind you. But the dad himself had looted, it says, $600 million from the pension funds of his employees in a vain attempt to keep the empire afloat, and so on. It says here that Robert Maxwell saw himself as Britain's Joseph P. Kennedy, the patriarch of a dynasty that would wield financial power and political power on a global scale. Like Kennedy, he expected much of his children and pushed them hard. Now, this is interesting here. This is an old article. Right? But it said he would interrogate them at the dinner table about history or geopolitics, said a once regular guest at the sprawling Maxwell estate in southern England. He could reduce them to tears if they didn't know an answer. He could be a cold man, and the temperature of the house dropped noticeably when he was there. It says the colder he was, the more his youngest daughter tried to please him. Well, you'd almost swear he's training them for some kind of intelligence agency at that age, and geopolitics and all the rest of it in a very serious way, yeah? And it says he even thought that one day he could forge an alliance with the Kennedys by marrying Ghislaine to JFK Jr. The two became close friends, remained so till Kennedy's tragic death last year. Interesting. It's also interesting here, the way things are worded. It's a few months later. This is in 1991. He bought the tottering Daily News and rescued it from oblivion, and she was sent him in hand to be the advance guard for his foray to New York society from Britain. And a few months later, he was dead. Of all his children, she took his death the hardest. She was unable to accept his guilt and likely suicide, and insists to this day that a dark conspiracy, this is what she should maintain, it says to this, that was up to the year 2000, a dark conspiracy of Mossad renegades, interesting term, renegades, and Sicilian contract killers took his life. Now, why would you just not think Mossad, period? Why should you say renegades? Why would renegades the Mossad go from? It's her inability to understand what, It's astonishing to me because Epstein, she was definitely procuring, it seems, for Epstein in the US for years. She was given by her dad the money before he died for the Kit Kat Club in England. That was an interesting term they used from an old club, a name that used to exist, of Whigs. They called them Whigs at the time. These wealthy merchant industrial types who were all for a type of change in the world. In a sense, that was a particular club where they could talk without being just slammed in prison for maybe threatening to overtake the government or something, or do away with it, or whatever it happened to be. It was a club, but she eventually was given, they called it a working girls club. It's not for working class, it's wealthy. It's almost like she was already into that kind of thing then, recruiting people, for women, for certain things. And I wonder about it, because her statements before about Britain, and then about her dad, why would the Mossad go for her dad? And then you see Epstein and this odd thing with Wexner in the US, who seems to have been almost like acted like the parental type figure for Epstein, and a distributor of money, because it was in pushing him ahead. It's already been said by others that it's basically a honey trap system that he had, especially when he asked to know about the sexual proclivities of the different people who are using these youngsters. After having their thing off with the different people, he would question these girls about their preferences and what if they said anything, and yada yada yada. This is sort of blackmailable, and everything would be filmed naturally. They keep talking about photographs, but how many videos and CDs, etc. Or were they all burned at the island when they had those big fires there? I don't know. We'll never know. But of course, lots of folk are going to wonder, really, and not surprisingly, at the information that man had in his head. And obviously, to me anyway, all the agencies behind, remember it came out too, Acosta and different people, long before that too. And other articles here from top newspapers going back years, where some of them mentioned that they thought that Epstein, as far back as 2000 as well, was possibly Mossad. So it's like a massive honey trap operation. A person who was involved and caught out at it would definitely have had, you've even seen it in the movies, a whole bunch of people would get letters to be released on his death if things look suspicious, you know. And that would be his security for whoever he would possibly work for and deal with. And someone who had so many different politicians from different countries, and no doubt top civil servants and so on, and people of every, and all the power different areas, well, you would have to get the state involved to somehow quiet it down. The best way is to say he's dead. They still talk about old Robert Maxwell. I mean, he was supposedly found miles and miles and miles away from his yacht, and it's never been explained either as to exactly how it all happened. Was it him they even found? It's easy to get a body, isn't it? And some of these little places, these little island places, everything's just bribery. You can get anything you want, you can buy anything you want, you get it stamped, no problem. And smuggling someone out of a prison, well, if it came from the very, very top because of national security reasons and had to be done, well, that'd be the end of it. You would have the right folk in the right time, the cameras would go off, and that would be that, basically. So what I'm saying is just, it's going to create more and more questions, this whole incident, than it's going to answer. Really. You can't overestimate the power behind it. This isn't just a massive paedophile ring. This is a well-worked-out standard system of sexual slavery, and it's, for definitely high-profile characters. And some of the girls actually said that their passports were taken from them by Ghislaine, I think it was. And they had to have sex with different characters that they were taken over to other countries, and they couldn't leave the country without the passport, so they were getting blackmailed into having sex, etc. This is quite an operation. Much, 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 much bigger. And there's no doubt about it. You've got at least one intelligence agency, I would say, behind this. And the guy could be working for a couple. As I said before, I really believe myself that for many years the top agencies are really just one. And the big Five Eyes idea is maybe more than just five. But anyway, that's just by the by. So I'll put this article up anyway, how Ghislaine rose from the ashes, supposedly, after her dad died. And inside the mysterious Manhattan apartment building on East 66th Street, where underage models, lawyers, and key players in Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking circle all live. And Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak is a frequent visitor, and so on. Lots of articles. I'm sure you've seen them all yourself. It's more like a soap, in a sense, when these things break out, especially with the way they're treated, because there's much, much more can be said. But because you're dealing with big, powerful organizations, people are terrified, really. Terrified. And everybody on the general television stations know exactly where their bread is buttered and what to say and what not to say. That's the ones who give your opinions, eh? It's quite amazing to really, really, really look at it all. And then unsealed documents detailed alleged Epstein victims' recruitment at Mar-a-Lago is another one. Now, this one here is an old one too. Robert Maxwell, the flamboyant head of one of the world's biggest media empires, was discovered dead in the sea yesterday. This is 1991. After disappearing from his yacht off the Canary Islands, as London business analysts were predicting the breakup of his business empire under the pressure of £3 billion debts. Says his widow, Elizabeth, and her son Philip flew to Gran Canaria and identified his body at the Gando Air Base. They later flew to Tenerife, where the inquiry into the death will be held. The body of the Daily Mirror publisher was winched from the Atlantic by a Spanish helicopter 20 miles southwest of Gran Canaria. Spanish national radio said he was unclothed and showed no sign of violence. At a hastily improvised midnight press conference in Reina Sofia airport at the south of Tenerife, the island's civil governor Angel Delgado said Mr. Maxwell's motor yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, that's with the same name of course as Maxwell, his daughter, left Santa Cruz in the north of the island at 10 p.m. Monday and put into Puerto de los Cristianos 9 a.m. yesterday. But the body was found by a fishing boat floating 19 to 20 miles from Gando on the other side of the neighbouring island of Gran Canaria, more than 100 miles from the obvious route between the points of departure and arrival. Asked to explain how the body could have got there, Mr. Delgado replied, "That's a good question." Well, whose body it might have been? And this is the stuff of movies, isn't it? But the oldest trick in the book used to be people putting their clothes and stuff next to a cliff and the sea down below, etc. And then there's someone who just committed suicide. And they would disappear, of course. Sometimes they'd turn up 20, 30 years later in some exotic place or something like that. Well, so it makes you wonder. These things actually happen, as you well know. And if you did have intelligence agencies involved, it could be the easiest thing at all, easiest thing to arrange someone else to be. There's plenty of cadavers around, folks, every day, plenty, and with the right connections and that, you can get anything you want, or a lookalike or whatever. I'm just it's speculation. It's just stuff of movies, but that's the real world, though, isn't it? Look what we're really looking at here, just with the Epstein case. Just you wait and see. Yeah, not difficult. But it is the stuff of incredible conspiracy indeed. And let's be honest here, the very fact that the man was caught before and charged and pretty well given a slap on the wrist by all the news reports, it meant there's a lot of people in the US government and state departments and state governments too that had to turn a blind eye deliberately or stamp different documents to get them away with that one. Come on here, come on. It's got telltale signs everywhere. Also, Chelsea Manning, jailed for a year for refusing to testify against Assange. There's your freedoms for you. There's how they can get what they want to get from people, right? It's just like other folk they don't want to get information on. Nobody knows anything, eh? That's okay. FBI document warns conspiracy theories are a new domestic terrorism threat. Well, I've heard all that before too, because you're not allowed to say certain things, and eventually you won't be able to say anything unless you belong to a top newscaster on television. That's how it's going to be, a top group. And also remarks at the launch of the United Nations Strategy and Plan of Action on Hate Speech by Antonio Guterres. I think Antonio Guterres, I remember, he was basically a communist pretty well, was his life. So again, they have their function, their place, and like Quigley said, he said, we take everybody into this organization, the CFR. He says, communist dictators, and it doesn't matter to us, he says. the guys who gave you all these organizations. So it'll be very selective who gets hammered, and today it's just targeting certain people. Also, Christine Lagarde, who was in many scandals before when she was head of the IMF, tax-free position, by the way, not bad for some, eh? And it says the world of monetary policy, according to Christine Lagarde, because she's now moving to be put in charge of the European Central Bank to practice her magic there as well. And you'll see how all that goes. Interesting stuff coming up in money. Very interesting stuff indeed. Because, yeah, you thought that was bad enough in 2008, you wait and see. Because now they're going to bring in the non-weirdness of negative interest rates. Now going to get charged just for having your money in the bank now. You've been trained to believe it's a good thing now. Everything you believed in the past was wrong, you understand, and they're going to give you new ways of looking at it. Before it was good to try and get a few bucks together to save for something, but now you're going to get punished for just not using it, and they'll charge you for having the money in the bank at all, or even using the bank, and it's going to be good for the world, good for you. You wait and see. Yeah, you understand? All the old things you thought were right are all wrong, all of them, and this is the new order, the real one, eh? You've got the International Monetary Fund, 75 years. It's got evolve or risk irrelevancy. So now they're going to revamp it with a new name or new something. Not quite sure yet. Well, they will be sure. This won't tell us yet. They're talking about it's maybe outlived its old purpose. So now you got a new purpose for it and all that kind of stuff, or a new name or whatever, right? And then you've got United Nations flags need to eat less meat to curb land use impact on global warming. Oh my God. There you go. It's all your fault, right? And I'll put up the ones on Maxwell, as I've said before. It's interesting, really. You could really do a great movie on this one. Honestly, you could, couldn't you? It's got all the things. It's got sex. It's got blackmail, threats, coercion. It's got intelligence agencies and the possible blackmailing of different, government people. Oh, it's fantastic. It's got all this beautiful story, eh? Where's James Bond? And also, it's possible Reserve Bank chief hints Australia could soon have 0% interest rates. So what will it mean for you? Oh my goodness, it's getting scary now, eh? Getting scary. But really, I prattled on so long already, and I've got to bring it down a bit because there's some stations actually broadcast this stuff. And if we go over the limit, they have to crush it into a higher speed rate, which makes me talk like a chipmunk. So I really shouldn't go too far on it here. But I hope you'll get something out of what I've prattled on about tonight, because I don't really plan these things. I like to just have things come into the mind as they come into the mind on certain topics. But get ready. I would say get ready for the next crash, because it's not planned. It's not. They're not talking about it happening. It is planned. It's definitely planned, and they're bringing in the new system as we live through it with negative interest rates in Australia. And I'll put some articles up there about that and how they've been warned in Australia, and also too there'll be limits on spending actual cash. Under the guise of they're not going to allow folk to avoid taxes by using cash. Well, cash is still a legitimate tender, as you well know. And until they make it illegal, then they can't really penalise you for using the stuff. And it's the best stuff to have if the ATMs and all everything else goes down or gets hacked again, as they frequently do. So for myself, and I hope you're all doing well, because as I say, I see people out there, people get in touch with me all the time. And I like that, because the system of the internet and this faceless society, except for pictures on screens, etc., that's not living, folks. And you should try and get a little circle of your own friends where you can actually, if you can get on with enough people these days, and make some friends, because it's important to have real conversations and real contacts with real people. The internet changes how you deal with people and how you perceive reality. It really is meant to do that. And of course, we really do. We're meant to live with people and be with people, and be, meet people, for instance. That's very important. So from myself, Alan Watt from Ontario, Canada, it's good night to me. Your God or your gods go with you.